Cookie Monster car?
Yeah. The blue one? Anyways. All right. So I know yesterday, okay, a lot of us were struggling on how to name those sides and how to figure that stuff out. Okay. Thank you. Anyways, what we're doing today is, I'm hoping, well, you just got to give it a second to turn on. I'm hoping this will kind of help you learn it, all right, and figure out how to name that. Because if you don't know how to do this basic thing, all right, the next two sections, when we do those proofs, it's going to be tough, okay? So let's say, go ahead and draw these two triangles out. Okay, go ahead and write. No.
I was lost yesterday.
Connor, write these down. I know, but you didn't add those. All right. Make sure you add the angles and add the sides, okay? And just pay attention to what I'm saying, okay? Last hour is making me mad because they just kept asking the same question over and over again. All right. When we are doing this, okay, I'm going to show you how to how we can name that these two triangles are congruent. Now, there can be multiple ways, but let's just discuss the basic part real quick. So if I say I have triangle CAB, okay, and I need to say how it's congruent to the other triangle, so the one including R, S, and T, okay, let's pay attention to that first letter. Okay, so my first letter is what? C. Now see how angle C right here, it has 3 angle marks? Okay, so what angle is congruent to C? T, okay? So if C is the first letter, T needs to be my first letter right here when naming that triangle. Because those, just wait, because those two angles are congruent, all right? Now, let's pay attention to that next letter. So my next letter is A, okay? So that just has 1 angle mark right here. Which one has just 1? S. So S is going to be my second letter, all right? Before we move on to the third letter, okay? Notice CA are the first 2 letters, okay? Look at CA right here. It's got the 3 congruent marks, okay? Well, what side is CA congruent to? It's congruent to TS, just like right here. It has the same congruent marks. All right, and notice how those are the first 2 letters, okay? So let's figure out if our third letter is B over here. What's our third letter over here? R. And are B and R congruent for the angles? Okay, what about if I say side AB? Is that congruent to side SR?
Yes.
It is. Okay, what about C is CB, the first and third letter? Is that congruent to TR? Okay, it is. Now, this is one way you could have done it. All right, let's say I did triangle ABC. Okay, is congruent to triangle. Now, if I did ABC, notice how the C just goes at the end? So then how should I name this one? SRT. And if you notice, A and S are congruent, B and R are congruent, C and T are congruent, and that's in the same order. And you could check the same thing with the sides. AB is congruent to SR, BC is congruent to RT, okay, and so on. Do we see that? All right. It still works if we name the triangle BAC. All right, then it would be triangle RST. as long as those angles are in that right spot. Okay, do we have any questions on that? No, that's not it.
That's just to help clarify, I guess.
In a way, yes. Okay, what if I gave you this? Now, are the triangles marked? No. But can we figure out what angles and what sides are congruent just based on this?
Yes.
We can. Okay? Why is that?
Well, because it's the same triangle, it's just flipped upside down.
Well, don't think of it as that. But if we're given the order of the letters, can we figure that out?
Yeah. How do you know? Because if E and F are.
Say that one more time.
How do you know? Like, the last one. Well, I can tell you right here.
It doesn't necessarily matter as long as you're marking the angles correct. Okay? Because so we'll get to that in a second. So let's say D.
Yeah.
I'm marking D with just one angle. Okay? What angle is going to be congruent to angle D? G, because D is the third letter. G is the third letter. Okay? Now, yes, those just have one, all right? But it doesn't matter if it has 1, 2, or 3. It's just telling you both of the ones that just have one are the ones that are congruent to each other. Okay? So the ones that have two angles, all right? Those are just the ones that are congruent to each other. It doesn't matter the value, and it doesn't matter which ones, as long as you're saying the correct angles are congruent to each other. Okay? So if I mark E with 2, which one over here is congruent to E? H. All right, and then what about F? I. Okay? Do we see how we did that? Why not? What's your question? So if you know F and I are congruent because those are both the second letters. Now let's look at sides. If I do side IG over here, FD has to be the one that's congruent to IG. Okay, because that's the second and third letter. All right. What about EF? HI. So those two are congruent. And then finally, that leaves us with HG and DE. Okay? So do we see that? Okay. I'm going to hand you this real quick, and I want you to do a couple on your own. So I want to make sure you guys can do this. This should take you 5 minutes maximum. Send them backwards.
I finally figured it out last time. It took me a lot of thinking. I had to. No, I had to.
Is that 5?
I called him. He called me crying because of you.
Because of me.
Yes. Mr. Sandstrom's so unfair. Mr. Sandstrom,
Uh-huh. All right, make sure you just read the questions, okay, while answering. Work on this, Connor. It'll just take you 5 minutes.
Wouldn't that be right? SD is equal to IJ. Like, if you rotate it, make it
No.
flat. Yeah, because like it's
Mm-mm.
the same angle.
Mm-mm.
Unless
FD. 3 and 1. 3 and 2.
so IK.
What letter is that? Flip it. Because F, see how F has 3? And that's your first letter? Does K have 3? I has 3, so it needs to be IK. Ben, close your computer.
No, the other one.
Just keep working until I tell you to stop.
For 7 and 8, would I do all 3
Letters? Yeah. Yeah, you're just naming it
No,
like,
Ben, we're not.
yeah, you're just naming it like this.
CD.
Well, I know they're not marked, but if angle W is the first letter, what does it have to be congruent to?
But how do you know? It wouldn't be G, right?
Yeah, it is. That's the first letter.
I'm not writing a statement. I'm not doing number 7. It says write a statement. I'm doing.
I know. Do you know what that is? All you have to do is this. This is the statement.
So wait.
So just triangle blank is congruent to triangle blank.
So KJI is congruent
Is this one
to
R?
RTS.
Yes.
Is this one R?
Uh-huh. I'm just making sure it's right, but yeah, that's good. On 7, when it says write a statement, all you're putting is triangle blank is congruent to triangle blank. So you just have to name the triangles how they're congruent.
That did not happen. Y'all need to chill.
Where does this chair go?
That's what Carter.
Oh, my bad. My bad. I didn't even notice.
Still out the bank.
It took me countless hours. Is this how you do it?
Yeah, as long as you did it right. Mm-hmm. All right, spend like 1 more minute, and if you don't finish, that's okay. But just take 1 more minute. You got it. You're fine.
So I just take one, like, what do you mean? Right, it's like you say it, like, and I say J and J.
Yeah, you're writing this. Yeah. All right. Go ahead. Finish the one that you're on. All right, and then we'll talk about number 1.
I feel like he said to me.
All right, let's go ahead and look at this. First one asks us to find FD is congruent to what? Okay, well, let's find that line. So FD is going to be right here. All right, so that line has the 3 congruent symbols right here. So which other one on the triangle has 3 congruent symbols? It's IK. Now, pay attention that it's important to do IK because F is our first letter. That has the 3 congruent symbols. So does I. So that has to be our first letter. Then K is our second letter. All right, it has 1. D has 1. Okay, questions about that? All right, what do we get for number 2? Angle. What did you say, Jack? M. Okay, angle M. All right, what about number 3? How do we know it's angle F? And no, don't just say because of the image.
Oh, because, yeah, second letter.
Because it's the second letter. So use the second letter, F's the second letter, so therefore U and F have to be congruent. That's fine. What about angle W? Angle W is congruent to what?
G.
G. How do we know that?
Because it's the smallest angle.
No, it's not the smallest angle. Because W is the first letter, G is the first letter. All right, what about number 5? We should get C. What about number 6?
R.
Should get R. Do we have questions about those first 6? Is this helping a little bit?
This is helping an extreme amount if I knew this last night.
Okay, number 7. Now, we're writing a statement. So all we're doing on this is we're writing a statement which is just like this. That's all we're writing. So on number 7, yours may look different, okay? That's okay as long as the letters are in the correct spots with the other angle. And what I mean by that, I'll explain that in a second. Let's say I decided to do IKJ first. Is congruent to triangle. What angle is congruent to I? S. So S has to be my first letter. What angle is congruent to K? R has to be my second letter. So what does my third letter have to be? T. Now, if you had a different answer, maybe you had KIJ. You had KIJ. Maybe you had KIJ. Then you would have to have RST. Okay? Maybe you had JKI. All right? Then you would have to have TRS. Okay? You see how there can be multiple different ways? As long as those angles match correctly. Okay? Now, again, your answers might vary, but if you want to check 9, 10, 11, and 12, here's an example of what you could have got. So check those real quick. And if you didn't even get to those, that's okay. You can write down these answers. All right. Do you guys have questions about these or want to check your answer? Yeah. So that's a good point. All right, listen. So Grayson made a good point. Why on this one it has RST first, that's this triangle, and it doesn't have SRI first? Now, if you had triangle SRI is congruent to triangle RST, all right, that's totally fine. It's the same thing, okay? Even if these are switched and they're flipped, okay, that's completely fine. As long as you're saying that those two triangles are congruent, all right, and those letters are in the correct spots, okay? So if those were flipped, it's okay, all right? If you worked on 13 through 18, okay, that's good. These are just examples, but again, those can vary just depending on where you put those marks, right? I'll let you keep that paper, okay, but go back to your notes, all right? And we're going to start on something that our goal was to start today, okay? So go ahead and get your notes out. Go back to your notes. Okay, this is going to be kind of the beginning of proofs, okay? So this page is going to be important to have in your notes, okay? Because you can look back at it and it can help you figure out what to do on those boxes. But I'm going to explain what properties that we're going to be using and that you're going to be using a lot of, okay? And how to identify those. So before we begin, what were the 5 triangle congruences that we talked about? So who can name one? There's SSS. What's another one? Let's raise our hand. Yeah. SAS. What's another one, Grayson? HL. What's another one? We have 2 more. What? No. Flip that. No. No, why do we keep saying that? AAS.
I got mixed up.
Did you say SSA? That's not one. ASA is the last one. Okay? You got to remember, all right, listen, you got to remember these 5, okay? Now, we're going to talk about some of those properties. Does anyone remember reflexive property? We briefly discussed this, but we're going to be using it a lot more. Okay, does anyone happen to remember what it means? Was it you raising your hand? Okay. No. When we talked about reflexive property, we were saying it was like A equals A. It equals itself. Okay? Or if you had angles, maybe angle B is congruent to angle B. All right? Let me show an example of what that would look like in a problem. Okay? So let's go ahead and say we are given this triangle right here. This is A right here, B, C, and D. Okay? Now, let's say these are marked, all right, and these are marked. Okay? Now, I'm going to put some boxes here because this is what it's going to look like. Now, do you remember you guys were doing these proofs and you had these boxes and then it goes down to 1 box? Okay, so this is going to say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle, ADC. Okay. Now, we're going to put our triangle congruence here. All right, and we have to label the either sides or angles up here. Now, by looking at this, what are we given? What does it already tell us by looking at the 2 triangles? Does it give us any congruent sides or angles? Yes, you just said it a little. Yeah. AB, what he was saying is AB is congruent to AD. Right? Okay. See how those are congruent? This would just be given, okay? Because it already tells us that. Is there anything else that it already gives us? BC is congruent to DC. And that's given. Okay? So right here, these are sides, and this is a side. Okay? So we need to figure out our last box right here. All right? Now, we're going to be using reflexive property. Okay? Now imagine, see how there's two different triangles right here? And they're sharing that side. Do you see that? Like it's these two triangles, all right, but it's just put together. All right, and do you see how they're sharing this side, this middle side? Do we see that? Okay. This would be an example where if they are sharing a side, can't we say that it's the same value because they're sharing that side? This would be an example of reflexive property, where we can say AC is congruent to itself, so to AC. And this is reflexive property. Okay, because it's congruent to itself. So then if I say that, I'm going to go ahead and mark it. All right, and put the 3 lines because that means that that side, it's congruent to itself. Okay, so I marked it just like that. Now, is AC a side or an angle? It's a side, so I'm going to put an S down here real quick. So now, based on these two triangles, can I figure out what triangle congruence it is out of these 5 up here?
Oh, side, side, side.
Yeah, it's side, side, side. So I'm going to put S, S, S because it already gave us these sides and we found that third side. So this is an example of SSS. Okay? Biggest thing is, do we understand reflexive property here? And what that does?
It's just the same.
Mm-hmm. Now, reflexive property can also work for angles. So here's just an example that you guys will happen to see. So I'm just going to show you this now. All right? And we'll see it another time.
Are we gonna have a delta map?
We can talk about that later. All right. So do you see how I just drew that triangle? Okay. Pay attention because this is a triangle, like it's stacking on top of another triangle. All right. Do we see how there's 2 triangles there? I know that's not the straightest line. Okay. But do we see that? Do we see the 2 triangles? Okay. So is there any, when we do this, and if I were to label and put letters, is there any angle of these 2 triangles that they completely share? Say it louder. A. See this angle right here is with both triangles? So this would be an example where I say angle A is congruent to angle A. And the reason is reflexive property. Okay? Never mind. Okay? Do you have questions on that? I was looking at both of you. Okay? All right. Now, we will need to know what reflexive property is. Anyone remember what this symbol means? And no, it's not a backwards T.
I think that's guard guard.
I know. Okay, this means perpendicular.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Did you? You didn't say it loud enough. That's what I thought. Okay, so this means perpendicular. So let me explain what that means because we're going to see this as well. So let's say I have, again, a triangle that looks just like this. This time, if I say AC is perpendicular to BD, all right? When we have 2 segments that are perpendicular, what it does is think of it as, here, don't think of it as that. It's going to create 2 90-degree angles right here. Okay? So it's like perfectly like a cross, all right? Where it's going to be a 90-degree angle here, 90-degree angle there. All right? So perpendicular tells us it creates 90-degree angles. Okay? So if a triangle has a 90-degree angle, what kind of triangle is it? It's a right. Okay? So that's what a perpendicular would do. Do you remember what this symbol means? Yeah, this was parallel. We will see parallel as well. What does parallel mean? And don't just say they're parallel. They don't touch, they don't intersect, they just keep going on forever. All right, in the same direction. Okay? And we will look at some of those examples later. Okay? If I have a segment bisector, do you remember what it means when something bisects?
Separates. No, like it.
Yeah, say it louder, Alex. Yeah. Not really. So let's look at an example. All right, listen. Do we see two triangles here? I know, do you see two triangles? I'm going to go label the corners. Okay, so here's an example where we will see a bisector, okay? If I say segment BD, so BD bisects AE, all right? If BD bisects AE, what did we say a segment bisector does? It splits it into two. So then what would that tell me? What does it split into two? No?
It's in two halves of like it's in the other triangle. You know, like B is in.
What is split into two? No. The triangle's it's already two triangles. Every time we do these, it's two triangles.
But now it's one.
No. When BD bisects AE, okay, it splits AE in half. Okay? So if it splits into half, it gives us congruent segments. So if it splits AE, this line right here, it's going to tell us that AC is congruent to CE. Okay? AC is congruent to CE when BD bisects AE. Because it split AE into two. So, what if I said AE bisects BD? What would that do? If AE bisects BD, is congruent to what? No. BC. Okay? And do we see that? Okay. That's what segment bisector is. Now, let's pay attention to these two triangles because I'm going to show one more thing right here with this triangle. What can I say about this angle right here and this angle right here? Why can I say those are congruent? Well, yes, they're the same because that's what congruent means. Say it out loud. Someone, who just said it? They're vertical angles. Do you remember vertical angles? Okay, we'll see these again. Now, you see how I have the letter C right here? Okay, I cannot name these angles C because there's two angles of C. So I don't know which angle you're talking about if you just name it C. When you name this, you're going to need to name it angle ACB. So you're going to have to use three letters. Is congruent to angle ECD. All right? And what do we say the reason for this is? No. They're vertical angles. When we did vertical angles back in chapter 1, that's when we had something that looked like this. And we said these are congruent. They're the same value. That's just what's happening here. These are just triangles instead of arrows. Okay? Now, when I look at these two triangles, all right, I have two sides and an angle, so what triangle congruence can we say is for these two now? Say it out loud. Do we have two sets of angles? No, but you're close. There. Side, angle, side. Okay? We have side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. Okay? Do we have questions about this? All right. Do we remember what midpoint does? If we have the midpoint of something, all right, we know it's just, think of it as split in half as well. All right? Because we know it's right in the middle. What about angle bisector? What if I said, all right, listen, what if I said AC bisects angle BAD? What would this tell us? If the segment bisects an angle. No. If it's an angle bisector, okay, it splits angle BAD in half. So it would make this angle right here congruent to this angle right here. So we would have to say angle BAC is congruent to angle DAC. Okay? Now I want to show these before you see examples and you freak out. Okay? But a lot of this is repetitive. Okay? So luckily for these proofs, they're going to be like in boxes, okay? And it's going to direct you to get your answer, okay? These will be easier than the proofs that we did before, okay? But use and repeat them a lot, because if the more you practice with these, the better you'll get at it, because it's overall, it just becomes the same proofs over and over again, okay? We will use a lot of these properties that I talked about. So you will see a lot of reflexive. You will see a lot of vertical angles, segment bisectors. We'll see some midpoints, some angle bisectors. Okay, we will do examples together. All right, and I know it might seem like a lot of examples we do together, but the more we do together, the better you'll get at it. As long as you are paying attention and listening, because at some point it's just going to click for you, and you're going to be like, "Oh, this is easy." Okay. So that's it for today. There's no homework assignment. All right. I will see you guys on Thursday. There isn't one.
So I got